Hey everybody, in this brief video I'm going to show you my favorite close focus wide angle image that I got on a recent dive trip to the Blue Heron Bridge in South Florida. I caught a ray and a sand perch in the foreground facing me with my dive buddy in the background. It's pretty cool, and furthermore I got it with a simple setup, a compact camera, no strobe, no artificial illumination. So let's check it out. So on a shore dive at the Blue Heron Bridge at about 15 feet depth, I had noticed a yellow stingray with a sand perch near it. Not sure why, maybe shadow feeding. I got the brilliant, or maybe more like crazy, idea to try to capture not one, but two foreground subjects, the ray and the perch, as well as my dive buddy in the background. The challenge was to get them all in focus, well illuminated, and in decent position. My dive buddy was kind enough to pose low in the sand a few feet behind the ray with her gaze toward the ray. I had to position myself such that the ray was in between me and the diver, and the sun was not in front of me, or the front of the ray would be in shadows. You can see that the sun was coming from the right side in this image. The sand perch seemed pretty curious and didn't seem too afraid of my very slow approach, but it was constantly moving around, and this is the best image I got that day. The ray and the diver are okay, but I should have gotten lower and closer to the ray. Also, the sand perch at the red arrow was facing away from me. Kind of disappointing overall. The next day I found another ray, again with a sand perch. My dive buddy again approached the ray from behind, gazing toward the ray. Luckily, the sun was behind me. The image shows the ray facing me, the diver with good profile facing the ray, but only a side view of the sand perch. The image is pretty boring. Also, I was too far from the ray, and the sand perch is almost out of the frame. Not that good. Here I got much closer to the ray, and now there are two sand perch. But the ray had moved, and when I repositioned myself to photograph the ray, the diver is now completely out of the frame. So frustrating. This one is much better. I am now close to both foreground subjects. The ray is facing me, and the sand perch is close to the ray. I also got my dive buddy with good profile and gaze. Everything's in decent focus. The sun was behind me as I wanted. However, I was so close to the ray, you can see my shadow falling on the front part of the ray. Again, very disappointing. Finally, I got really lucky. Honestly, this is my favorite close focus wide angle image of the entire dive trip. My depth was about 15 feet. My compact camera, which I used on all these pictures, was again in Aperture Priority Mode, which I always use with available light. I set the aperture to f10, almost the smallest aperture on my camera to achieve good depth of field. The ISO was increased to 400, which resulted in a fast enough shutter speed of 1 to 250th of a second. All right, fast enough to prevent any motion blur. I locked my focus on the ray, then recomposed the image such that my dive buddy was included in the image and the ray was in the lower part of the image. The ray let me get low and approach very closely, and the sun was somewhat to the side, so my shadow does not fall on the ray. The ray fills the foreground, and the size perspective distortion now makes the stingray appear really large, almost larger than the diver. The diver also has excellent profile, low on the seafloor, not exhaling bubbles, and the diver is looking right at the ray. Luckiest of all, just at the right time, the sand perch, which was hovering right over the ray, turned to look right at the camera and actually held still for a moment as if posing. Pretty cool. The ray, sand perch, and diver are all well illuminated, all in focus, and all facing me. I was pretty lucky, and I'm quite pleased with that picture. Well, there you have it. This image probably isn't going to win any awards, but I absolutely love it. And it really was pretty simple. I used a simple compact camera, no strobe or artificial illumination. The hardest part was having a cooperative and patient dive buddy, and most importantly, having two cooperative subjects, the sand perch and the ray, to allow a close approach and to have them actually face me. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in.